Coaches across the country used the Coachpad this past season to be more efficient with their scout card prep on the weekends as well as when out on the practice field working with their scout teams. Whether you're a coach using a computer program to create cards or drawing them by hand, the Coachpad is for you. Never printing paper or stuffing a binder, clearly seeing scout cards outdoors in the bright sun, and using the Coachpad on game days, syncing diagrams from the press box to the sideline were some of the features coaches enjoyed this season. This offseason, get your Coachpad at thecoachpad.com to get your program ready for next season. Thecoachpad.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have an old friend, Coach Sheffer on, who is now an assistant football coach at the renowned Kettle Run High School there in the great state of Virginia. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have you on. Like, before we go into like 18, and I'm gonna be honest, people listen, and this might cause people to turn it off, and I really don't care. I honestly don't know how much football we're going to talk here in a minute, like actual football. This is about to go probably down a weird spiral, but also we're recording this in July, and this is coming out in, I don't know, November or whatever the hell this comes out. So, but I mean, obviously you've gone through a job change for a variety of reasons. We don't necessarily have to get in those unless you want to, but I mean, how is the transition to Kettle Run going, Coach? How's that experience? And I mean, how are you guys feeling for this coming year?
Well, to kind of give it a little bit of background, I have been on, I think I've been on your podcast before, and you've definitely been on mine a couple times. So back then, I was for the last 6 years, I've been at Brentsville High School, which is in Northern Virginia, in Prince William County. I don't know if anybody's familiar with where that is. We're the smallest school in that county. We were 3A in a state in Virginia where 6A is the highest, and every school in our county is a 6A except for us. So it was a different experience being there. And like you mentioned, I did make a change, and it wasn't necessarily something that I had wanted to do. Um, you know, up until a couple months ago, I thought that I was going to spend my entire career at Brentsville. And I know a lot of coaches on here are probably saying, he's silly. Most coaches don't stay in the same place for very long. Uh, like I don't like change. I'm probably a little bit on the spectrum there. I'm a little weird. So like I really don't do well with change. I really like a routine, and I got into a routine there. I had good friends, and um but we mentioned before the podcast, I was potentially being de-staffed from that school because we were losing population numbers at our school, and I was the youngest teacher in our department, which is saying something. When I'm 32 years old and I'm the youngest teacher in the department by far,
Mm.
at least by a decade. Nobody left that school, um, and so I had had some interest from some other schools, and when I knew I was being destaffed, I interviewed at a couple schools for some teaching jobs, and luckily I got one at another school, which is it's a big school, not too far away from home. It's maybe like an extra 5 minutes away from home, called Patriot High School, and so I'll be teaching there. But a buddy of mine at one of our rival schools, Kettle Run, reached out to me, brought me in to meet with the head coach of Kettle Run, and they really convinced me that it would be a better opportunity at Kettle Run. I'm not really going to go into all the details with why I made the decisions. There's lots of decisions that had to be made, but coaching wise, the decision was to go to Kettle Run, especially for, my goal is to be a varsity offensive coordinator. And the last 3 years I spent as the head coach of the JV at Brentsville, which I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything because it's definitely made me a better coach, especially with like practice planning and putting together an offense and helping out with everything. For most of that time, I basically did everything for the JV, like everything. The other coaches were pretty much hands off. And that was a lot. that was part of the decision making, because I was like, I can't do this anymore. It was just too much. And so you asked about the transition. So when I was at Brentsville, I was head coach of the JV, so taking care of all that. I basically ran the strength and conditioning program for the coaching staff there, and it was me and like 2 other guys who helped out consistently. That was a lot, because I was in, doing football year round, basically, which kind of started getting burned out a little bit. And so when I came over to Kettle Run, I was told, hey, we've already got a guy for the weight room. You don't have to do any of that. We're going to do 7-on-7s during the off season, but you don't have to be there every single one. We've got all this other stuff we're doing, but you don't have to participate. And so this summer I've spent a lot more time than I used to with my family. And let me tell you, my wife had racked up quite the honey-do list. We are wrapping up, and we start football practice in we're recording this on a Saturday. We start pro football practice August 1st, which is 5 days from now. and I'm still working on wrapping up a DIY bathroom remodel that my wife forced on me a couple weeks ago. It's been weeks and we're still not done. I don't know if anybody's from, remodeling. It's not exactly my thing. But YouTube is our best friend. We're still trying to figure out how to install the new light fixture without electrocuting ourselves.
Turn the power off first. That's step 1.
Yeah, step 1. We had to figure out which breaker to that room, because it wasn't labeled. That room wasn't labeled, so that was a fun time trying to figure out which breaker went to that room. And so that was interesting. We had to take down wallpaper that was probably older than me. We had to do sanding of the drywall. I'm gonna have to re-put up, like everything. I just built a brand new cabinet that went in there. And I'm not a handyman by any sense, so it was something that we ordered off of Amazon, and it had instructions. So I still got it done. And then we painted, and we had to choose a paint. I had to do all that. It's still not exactly the color I thought it was going to be.
It never is. It never is. Never is.
And if you look too closely, you can see where we kind of screwed up on some places, but it's a lot better than what it was. And when it's going to be done, it'll look nice, and it'll make my wife happy for a little bit.
A week or two.
She's not looking forward to me going back to practice. She likes me being around to help out with the kids, so it helps her and my mother-in-law get out of the house more often, which I do. Happy wife, happy life. So, yep. She's going to be with them for how long's the football season? 5 months.
I mean, just
depending on how far
you go, coach. Just depending on how far you go.
And last 3 seasons, it was me doing 2 games a week, because I would do everything for the JV, and then I would still be on the varsity, and then be there Friday night and Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings. It was a lot, and it's just different because I'm giving up a lot of the decision-making process I'm not having to do anymore. And so I don't feel that stress of being the guy who's like responsible for all that. But I also find it hard to give up that authority, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, I'm taking a step back and letting other people make decisions. And now my job, I'm going to be probably one of the least important coaches on staff. I'm going to be a tight ends coach.
Not the least. I was waiting for you to say running backs coach.
That's what they offered me at first, but I took too long to decide.
I mean, that's not me trying to be mean or sugarcoat it. And I think every offense is different, obviously. But historically, like if you look at data and staffs, running back coach is usually like the young guy or the new guy or the coach that you're like, because I mean, 9 times it's like you're in like mesh or pass pro or with the offensive line, in virtually every offense. So you're always with two coaches.
Well, that's similar for tight ends. I mean,
Yeah,
in most systems, a tight end spends half their time with the O line and half their time with the receivers.
correct.
So I doubt I'm going to be alone very often, which is fine. Like, it doesn't bother me that much. I don't mind it because it takes a lot of pressure off of me having to know what to do all the time, especially since the head coach is the offensive line coach. So I get to know how he coaches and how everything goes. And I'm still learning the offense. Honestly, the offense at Kettle Run isn't that much different than what we did at Brentsville, but we're going to be doing a lot more zone than we did at Brentsville, which I'm familiar with that because I'm a football nerd.
Yeah.
So it's just learning the system and learning how the coaches like to do things. And I have to learn, like, I texted Porterfield because I was like, practice is on Thursday. You haven't said anything about doing like a coaches meeting. He was like, oh yeah, we're going to have one of those soon. I'm like, okay. Cause I'm the planner.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who comes out with a calendar, and has everything planned out. I have to, because I can't just wing it. But so giving up control has been different. I think it's been good for me though, because now I'm actually excited to start.
Yeah.
The last two seasons, I feel like I've been burnt out because it just never stops.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling very well, coach, giving up head coaching. I know that feeling.
And I know we kind of mentioned it before, but now that we finally have a new college football video game, that also gets me excited too, because now I'm excited for college football.
I just really need them to fix the bug where every time I run rocket toss, it gives all the rushing yards of the quarterback.
Oh yeah.
Because in my one dynasty, my freshman quarterback has like 2,000 rushing yards, and he's got some rushing yards. Don't get me wrong, them boot and scoot, but not that many.
Who'd you go with your dynasty?
So the one I'm on with a buddy. I picked Hawaii, and I wasn't going to run and shoot, but then I looked at how their offensive line was graded, and they had one guy above a 70. So I was like, as much as I would love to run the run and shoot right now, we don't have the personnel for that. So we're going to just run rocket toss and fullback dive until people cry, and it's worked. 9-3, like.
Yeah. So first of all, I've been playing NCAA 14 for what, 11 years now, and then revamped recently, running the offense that I ran was like the spread option, where you had like the split back and you ran the triple option, and
the old Oregon, West Virginia playbooks. Yep.
Yeah. And so I, over the last couple of years, I probably only lost like 5 games on that, because you spam the same plays over and over again, right?
That's pretty much what I'm doing right now for the triple. Is I am literally just spamming like 7 plays. I'll occasionally throw another one in there.
Yeah.
It is.
And the first game that I turned on, I did Texas and Texas A&M something. I know I played as Texas, and I threw 5 interceptions.
Oh, coach, that is
the first game. So the game is way different, and so it's a learning curve, and so I actually have to learn how to read defenses, because like the old game, you just spam the same plays, and there's always that one person open.
Well,
right? If it's not this guy, that guy's open. There's something, and now so you got to learn the how to play the game. And of course I started on Heisman.
Oh, that's a bad life choice right there too, coach.
I started on Heisman because I always played on Heisman.
Yeah,
on the NCAA 14, and I was destroying it.
I've stuck it all American. I'm sticking there for right now. That's just
that's where I'm at right now.
Your point, like Coach, what's his face from Part of My Take, Coach Doug's. He's been having. I mean, he's progressed to being whatever now, but like at the beginning, he was kind of the same way, just having a meltdown over just the changes. I mean, it's
I understand why people are upset, especially if it's just the gamers, because a lot of people who played NCAA 14 were just gamers, right? And they were just spamming something, and they don't really understand the nuances of football. They don't understand a lot of stuff. And so they go into this game, and this one actually forces you to understand pass protections because they added that function in there because now you can change the pass protections. Makes you understand how the trajectory of the ball is affected, makes you understand why you call certain plays versus certain coverages, right? Because in the old NCAA 14 game, I could just call play action. It didn't matter what coverage they were in. Play action worked. In this game, I haven't gotten play action to work very well. Just haven't. I get sacked almost every time.
I don't get sacked, but I get rushed pretty
mhm.
pretty efficiently there. But also, again, when I'm in my one dynasty, I have Hawaii, and the offensive line they did not do very many favors to grading that offensive line. I would just phrase it.
And so I've done a couple different things. Obviously, I do a lot of practice. I'm trying to figure out certain things, and I've learned how to do. I really like where I can go in and do hot routes. And one of the new things on the game is they give you the custom stems for the hot routes, for the routes. So you can make a corner longer or shorter. You can make the ins and outs longer, shorter, however you want. You can just completely make up your own plays as long as you do it with enough time. And I've started to figure out ways to work that versus different coverages. I also, for any coaches out there who are interested, I don't usually use the base offenses that are on the teams. Like I used to use Texas's offense, and it's fine and it works. But if you're following Coach Dan Casey on Twitter,
I was about to say just download Dan Casey's playbook.
I downloaded his playbook, and I love it. There's a ton of RPOs and motions and funky gadget stuff, and it works as long as you don't throw interceptions. It works.
Well, that's every offense, coach. I don't know what you're talking about. That is.
And so the first dynasty I started, I went with Army, and it's the only one I've started. I'm on starting in season 3. My first season, and I'm using Army's base playbook on the game. Their passing game is crap on that game. There's not much. There's not much there. And so I think that first season, and if anybody knows, if I'm a big Army fan, so I know a lot of their players, like Bryson Daly, their quarterback, can definitely run the ball. Can't freaking throw the ball very well. I would probably average 3 or 4 interceptions a game that first season because I kept trying to throw the ball. I kept trying to throw it. I kept trying to do play action. I would get 3rd and 15 because I'd get sacked, right? And then I'd throw interceptions because I would rush it. And so I ended the first season, oh geez, what was it? Like 8-4 or something, and getting my butt kicked in the Boca Raton Bowl or something by NC State. And then the next season, second season, I started 1-2. Right? I was like, oh crap, here we go again, because I had a freshman quarterback and all this other kind of stuff. And after a while, and after that, I was like, screw it, I'm not throwing the damn football. And I run rocket toss, I run fullback zone, I run fullback dive, I run.
That is my one complaint with the Flexbone playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I know a lot of the people in the Flexbone world, college wise, not just D1 but lower levels too, is one I mean it's drastically limited the playbook on there.
Yep.
And 2, the fact that you can't run zone dive out of every formation. You can run zone dive out of every formation. That is the base play in virtually every variation of the Flexbone, quote unquote. The one that is probably the closest to being farthest away from that is Air Force. Air Force is probably the farthest. They're a little more ISO and belly. But all of them have the ability to run zone dive. Zone dive replaced quite a bit of quite a bit of the offense. Like mid double is not really ran much more. Outside veer is not really ran that much anymore.
Don't dive.
And Air Force has gotten really good with like the quarterback counters and the cornerback powers, which are just blocked terribly on the game. That's a whole nother. I have my severe issue with how quarterback power from under center is being blocked, but I digress. That's it.
I will say, my favorite plays, obviously rocket toss is probably my number one. It's OP. It works.
Yeah,
Unless every now and then you'll get a defender that just runs straight up field and gets you, or you get a corner or a safety that's really fast. But
that or when the 3-3 like tight 3-3s get a certain set, then they kind of take it away. But it usually opens up veer or it'll open up fullback dive.
And that's another thing I like about the game is they have that adaptive AI where you can't spam the same play over and over and over and over again. Like the defense will eventually take it away, but once they do, if you know football, right? Because if I know triple option,
I will tell you,
well.
UCLA's adaptive AI did not work week 2.
Yeah.
I will just let you know that I think I rushed for close to 600 yards and 400 at rocket toss.
I mean, it works. Like as long as you don't run it every single play, it works.
And
you're going to get 5 yards at least. I usually end up with like 15-yard plays. If I have a decent running back.
Jet shotgun, like jet touch pass.
Oh, that's a lovely play too. Yes,
that's another one. And like that one's a little easier to take away than rocket. At least in on the computer. But same thing. It is not. But it's also realistic. Like if you don't funnel a good force player like in real life, and I put a speed demon running sweep, it's hard to defend. It just is.
So in the option, I haven't done Air Force's offense yet because I'm still. I only get a certain amount of time every night that I can play it. Like I can't play it during the day because I'm with kids, and so I haven't done Air Force. I haven't tried Navy yet, and another one I wanted to try was Kennesaw to see if they were any different because they run triple option too.
That all pistol though.
So it's couple of plays like when I was playing NCAA 14 and I would run triple option. My favorite play was probably the midline. That one, like as long as you knew how to read it, you got decent yards. I cannot run midline in this new game to save my life. The read is so quick, and they changed the mechanics for the option. So now it's the opposite of what it used to be. I used to hit the button to hand it off. Now you just leave it alone to hand off.
It glitches out for me, and he auto keeps it every time. So like that's
I'd rather I would spam zone dive instead. I don't do midline anymore.
I just rush for like pretty much running dive and zone and dive. I mean, it's really the same play, just slightly different.
I'll do triple option every now and then. I'm getting better at it than I was. I prefer the triple option plays out of the pistol or the gun, though.
I will say they did do a good job with the RPO stuff for the most part.
RPOs are pretty nice.
They did a good job. They also did a really good job with the veer and shoot, the Tennessee Art Briles, whatever you want to call that system.
I still need to try that out.
They've done they've done a really good job with the spacing aspect, which is historically something they've not done, but like the spacing is fairly realistic. My complaint, and I don't care about saying this right now because by the time this comes out, the season's over, or I'm playing in a state title game, which is a whole different question. It would be the choice concept, which we run at Zanesville, and that I love very much. There are several things with the play diagrams with choice that are not accurate, and it bothers me, particularly when they do the 10 to 12 yard hitch, quote unquote. It's not really a hitch, it's a retrace. You should run back down the stem. They don't run back down the stem, and then a couple of their routes are funky, but that's a whole other conversation that I'm not gonna that's again, that's I don't even know how you would program that. So like that's the other thing I try to be mindful of is as I sit here and complain about a game that I've waited 11 years for and I'm fairly happy with.
Yeah.
You also got to remember what can you actually physically with this system that they run can actually program. And obviously not everything's gonna be perfect year one. Because it's not like it's Madden where they are just copying and making adjustments.
Yeah.
You know, supposedly they've already started making next year's. They like last week they went in a gear and they already talked to Reese Davis about being the voice again. Supposedly.
Well, they kind of have to. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's a lot. Again, you can copy and paste a lot.
yeah.
That's the nice thing about stuff like that. Obviously, players change. You want to update mechanics and fix certain things people don't like, but the base you can keep the same. I mean, obviously there's bugs and not things gonna be perfect year one, but I don't know. Like I said,
Oh, so year 2 in the Army Dynasty. I know most people don't really care, but
again,
year 2
my
in the Army.
they can turn
Year,
it off. I really don't care.
year 2 in the Army Dynasty. So I started 1-2. Okay. Started 1-2. I lost to Kansas State, who eventually made it to the playoff.
Okay, so good loss.
And then I lost to Tulsa in a bad game where I couldn't get anything going. And then after that point, when I was like, screw it, I'm just running the ball. Right. And so I go through, and then the rest of the season, I don't lose to anybody else except for UAB, who somehow ended up being ranked
Okay.
in the game. I lost to UAB 21-0, and then I beat ECU, who was ranked like number 10, and somehow I was ranked at the same time, and I was like 8-3 or something,
That must
right?
be nice.
And I ended up being ranked, and I beat ECU, and I jumped up to number 9, made it to the playoff.
There you go.
I didn't even win the conference. I didn't even win the conference. UAB went on to win a conference. We played for the I didn't play for the title at all.
So
Went to the playoff.
we're still in
Played
year
UAB in
one.
the first round, beat them, and then I went on a run and won the national title.
So we're still in year one, and um I am currently 9-3 and still not ranked, so I'm slightly irritated at this point. Um, so and none of my losses are bad, like they're all fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But still, I'm just
And it was weird because, and I hate to admit it, the first round of the playoffs, I was losing to UAB, and I couldn't do anything, and I blamed it. I rage quit. I hate admitting it. I rage quit because my wife was trying to spend time with me, and she was going through our kids' clothing that she was getting ready for next season and standing in front of the TV. And I was trying to look around like, I'm trying to run option, excuse my language, but I'm trying to run option here, get the F out of the way. And I rage quit because I was like, I was going to lose. And she called, and she was like, don't be a like, I'm like, shut up. It doesn't count because you were standing in front of the TV. And then I played it again and I won, and then made a run and won the national title. And so I kind of felt guilty because I should not have been in that position if I had been, virtuous and just taken the loss. But it's a video game, you know.
and let's be honest, we all want Army to win one national title in our lifetime. So, and I just, it's like real life wise, it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens with that 12-team playoff.
Yeah,
because you know, just like
something crazy is going to happen.
Oh, 4 being an issue, 10, 11, 12 are going to now be issues. Like it's like unless you let everybody in, there's always going to be you're always going to find a reason to complain. Sorry, like it's the semantics of it. So that's the interesting real world dilemma that they're going to have. But
like the thing, speaking of real life though, you know how the NFL is trying to go to like an 18 game season, and they're trying to figure out that logistic and try to keep everybody healthy. I'm sitting here thinking about the college football playoff. I'm like, in the FCS, they play fewer regular season games because they have the playoff, right? they're not reducing the number of games in the regular season for D1, but the teams that go to the playoff, let's say you're in the first round of the playoff and you don't get a bye. That's what, 3 extra games
You're looking
on
at you're
top of
looking
you.
at
You
16.
probably already had to play an extra game to win your conference to get in.
You're 16, 17 games every year. Like, this is because if you play Hawaii, you are allowed to have a 13th regular season game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're talking a 16, 17 week schedule. Now, I say that like it's a lot, but let's be honest. I think it's 16 games in the state of Ohio to win a state title. I believe Texas at 16 as well. So it's not like they're not used to it, and you're
Yeah.
talking deeper, better rosters theoretically.
Yeah, but college and high school is a different animal.
I don't
But
disagree with that. I don't, but semantically, you're plucking from good programs anyways. They're
yeah,
already running, and you have actual nutrition there compared to high
Mm.
school. But the NFL argues all the time, like we're cutting preseason games, you're getting 2 buys, blah blah, whatever. Again, arguing over semantics.
yeah,
I get why the NFL wants to do it. Um, I will say this as somebody who's a business teacher and has taught business and sports. More is not always better. I think that's part of the reason why NBA and Major League Baseball have some of the struggles is because they have too many games, especially baseball. I think one of
yeah,
baseball's problems is 160 whatever games is too many. 82 regular season basketball games. I would argue for a lot of people is too many.
yeah.
Uh, I think the NFL had a good thing with 16. I don't think 17's changed too much, but you're getting to that close to that point where you are getting to the too much point.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the NFL. People are going to buy tickets. They're going to make money.
Correct.
It's
But there's a
it's
point
all
of
about money.
diminishing
That's all it
returns.
is.
There is a
Um,
diminishing returns, like there just are,
yeah.
uh, and there is a point of too much. It is just.
Like I
I,
agree, over 80 games of basketball, like do any of those games individually really matter?
well, now you have the
Like
mid-season tournament too, so you like
yeah.
get that like even like college basketball. College basketball, you can play what's between 25 and 30 regular season games plus your conference tournament. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, unless again, I can't keep track of. And then don't get me started on college softball. They'll play like 8 games in a weekend. Like they'll have like
Hmm.
borderline triple headers, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So they do a
Hmm.
tournament. Like, oh, they were 0-0. Now they're 7-2 after the first weekend. What the like you can't again. I get why.
And think about all this conference realignment. You mentioned like how many games are being played. College football, like yeah, you got to go travel from California if you're USC to Ohio or to Rutgers, and that's once a week. Like yeah, that sucks. It's a long time, but think about like you said, college softball.
Well, that's I
How many
mean,
games a week do they have? And if you're one of those teams that plays in a conference that's technically across the country, how many times are you going to travel? Like, are they going to figure it out where like, oh, we have like a bunch of home games here, and then we go over to
I
like
think so.
Virginia?
Well, I get the sense softball is a lot more tournament baseball or tournament based early on. So you're at one location. And then it looks like they play double and triple headers versus the same team, like the same day or the same weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like that does happen. But yeah, from an economic standpoint, it's not your non-revenue sports. There's a problem.
Yeah,
I would argue your revenue sports is a borderline problem. But I mean, here nor there. Like it just the you're eventually the TV right deals aren't going to keep going up.
right.
TV viewership is going down. That is just a statistical fact. Um, that's it. Just
Well,
is.
I think the way things are going to end up going, and it's kind of going that direction now, um, is you're going to end up with like 2 or 3 mega conferences, like SEC and Big Ten, but you're going to have to do like regional divisions within those conferences. So like Big Ten, you're going to have like a West division that includes like Oregon, USC, UCLA, those teams, Nebraska, right? And it's almost like you just have to shift the divisions like you did before.
Yeah.
Like and then those teams play each other, and then you have a conference championship or something. But like some conferences don't have divisions anymore, and you basically got to play everybody. And in some of those conferences, that's a long way. Like
Yeah.
Speaking of the dynasty mode in NCAA, Army is in New York, and they have to travel to Tulsa, Oklahoma, in conference now because they play in the American.
Yeah, but that's
like
that is a little bit different semantics though, because that's on the federal government budget, but two, the Army views it as a giant recruiting tool.
Yeah.
And to be honest, their schedules were worse beforehand because they were going to like Stanford, and it was an independent schedule. Like they're playing Washington State week 14 randomly and whatever. And so like my real problem is that Air Force, Army, and Navy aren't all in the same division on that conference, whatever. And then my other semantic problem is just the geographic part. Like why is Marshall in the Sun Belt and not the MAC? Kind of the same thing with Army and Navy. Like I get they're not quote unquote ACC schools, and then I have a real big problem with Cincinnati being in the Big 12. Just geographically makes absolutely them and West Virginia make no sense. Like Central Florida, I'll give you. Okay. Southern Belt School, like whatever. Probably on the far end as well. But I digress. Colorado, Central Florida is a long plane ride. But the Cincinnati, West Virginia one really does not, because I've driven from Cincinnati to Texas, and that is not in Oklahoma. That is not a fun drive. And that's not realistic. But here nor there. That's why I like my MAC football, because it's all geographic. And when they try to expand, they talk to like Western Kentucky and schools like that, not to, I don't know, New Mexico State or Stanford. Like they talk realistic, like geographic, realistic schools. Sun Belt, I think, has done. Like I get why you picked up Marshall. It is somewhat geographic. West Virginia is along the Sun Belt, blah blah. But like, they're at least fairly realistic with their. Same thing with the Mountain West, fairly realistic. And then you have like the ACC. Oh, let's add Stanford and was it Cal? I like and Grant. Oh, will be nice. Midpoint school, SMU. That makes geographic sense. SMU is so close to Stanford. Not. God.
It's weird. It's weird. Like SMU is like really good in the NCAA game. They're like really good. Like every year they're in the top 25.
Well, because
in the dynasty mode.
If you look at it, like actually look at it, and this is what most people don't realize. And I didn't until I was hearing it on the podcast the other day, because somebody called it a top 5 job right now in college football. Because the expectation to win right now is not very high. Like to win, like in terms of national titles, like you're expected to win 8, 9, 10 games, but year 1 or 2 in ACC, you're not. You're expected to win 6, 7, 8. But 2, I guess they have one like the top 10 budgets in college football right now. Their alumni have been, I guess, throwing money in there like no other. I mean, they used to be good in the 80s, early 90s for the death penalty and all that, but like I guess alumni are just, and it's in one of the largest cities in the country, Dallas, Fort Worth.
Dallas, yep.
That's what people forget. They hear SMU. No, that's northern Dallas. That is. So, I mean,
fertile recruiting ground.
There's a lot of money going in the program. One of the fastest growing states in the country. Rhett Lashley is a good football coach. So it makes sense. I mean, they're right now nabbing recruits from me on my NCAA game late, but we digress from that. And
I think SMU makes sense money wise for the ACC, because what's every conference looking for? They're looking to bring in a school that has a lot of money available in their market. and they're trying to get into that Texas market, right? And it helps the ACC schools recruit Texas now because they're going to go play there.
Thing is just, I get it. Stanford and Cal didn't want to get left out, and the Big Ten didn't want to offer them, and they weren't overly excited about going to the Big 12. I get it. Like,
I think Big 12 would have made sense though. Like,
I know, but they did not view that with them losing Texas and Oklahoma as a big enough.
right.
Or I would argue the Big 12 right now might be the third best conference. I mean,
so they added like Arizona.
They had Arizona and Arizona State. They added Colorado. Utah.
They did get Utah.
Yep. So you added you lost Texas, Oklahoma, then you added 4 solid programs.
Really solid programs.
Yeah, Arizona and Arizona State are solid Big 12, money making, competitive in most sports. Colorado used to be in the Big 12 and obviously are a media magnet with Dion. And then Utah is just a well-financed
and BYU.
Oh, and BYU, and a well-financed program. And BYU obviously has the Mormon Church and well financial backing as well, and an historically solid program as well. I mean, Jim McMahon, Bill Walsh, who else? Lavelle,
Edwards,
the coach. I mean, so again, you had a bunch of good programs. I mean, really, Nebraska needs to go back to the Big 12, just geographic whatever. But
well, I mean, we used to complain about Nebraska being not making sense geographically, but now it's like they're not that bad compared to
but
USC and Oregon.
but like just from a historical perspective, since they've joined the Big Ten, it's not been the same. Like, there's a variety of reasons for that. You fire Frank Solich, when obviously that was a terrible move, and then you fire Bo Pelini.
That was awful.
Who's also doing a great job for what he had. 10-2 was not good enough as well, and since then you have been a dumpster fire. Like, you fire 2 coaches that average 9-10 wins a year. Like, I'm sorry, that's just dumb. Like,
I think Bo Pelini, his thing was they went like 3 years in a row, like 8-4.
Yeah, and they would beg for that right now.
Right.
Like,
and then a couple years later, wasn't it? It was at Houston. They fired. Who did they fire? It was
Applewhite.
Applewhite, and he was winning 8 games a year. And they're like, we'll fire somebody for 8-4, and then they go get Dana Holgerson, and what do? Like 6 wins a year most of the time.
Well, because the problem is, and here's the problem. He followed Tom Herman, who just won 10-11 games.
Yep.
Like, that is again, I've learned this as somebody who's been a head coach. You never want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be the guy that follows the guy that follows the guy. Because 90% of the time, the guy that follows the guy does not work out.
Yep.
Is that always true? No, that is not always true. That is 100% not always true. Like I said, Caleb DeBoer has probably the best opportunity to follow up Nick Saban as humanly possible. Okay. But like, if you look just across the board anywhere else, like, after Bear Bryant, after Jimbo at Florida State, now Jimbo did a good job following Bobby Bowden, but he was kind of already in the program, whatever. Hell, you can even look at basketball. Pat Summitt, like, they've not been terrible, but there's a big difference between Pat Summitt and where they've been. Like, just
I was listening. You mentioned the concept of following like the legend. I was listening to another podcast. I can't remember who said it, but they were talking about that concept of like if a guy who's had a really great career, or at least a really good few years at one school, leaves, you don't want to go for that job. especially if you weren't already on staff, because it said like the only time that works out well is if the guy that takes over was somebody who'd been on staff for a long time and kept it mostly the same. And then usually it doesn't always work out well, but oftentimes when that happens, it's usually left in pretty good hands. Like that guy got the job for a reason.
Yeah, but
And
you also got, but the other thing is that the problem with a lot of those people is they try to keep it 100% the same.
yeah,
And you can't be that person. I think the biggest lesson that is all the Bill Belichick assistants. They all try to be Bill Belichick. And what happens? It fails. You're not Bill Belichick. Like, no one is Bill Belichick. That man prepares and has a work ethic of like he's got that weird freak work ethic. The Michael Jordan, Kobe, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, like that freak. I will outwork you and outmuscle you like no other.
Yeah.
Like it's just a weird like so if you don't are not that guy like I've seen it at high school level, like, oh, we'll just promote within and then it implodes. Yeah, because he's not that person.
Not the same guy.
Good guy. Like I'm not saying that person's a bad person or a bad coach. It's just you're not that. I mean, you're just not. I think that's part of the reason why Andy Reid assistants do so well is they don't try to be Andy Reid. Like they learn stuff from Andy Reid, but they don't try to be him.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, to put that into like perspective for me, I used to think I wanted to be a head coach. Now I know that I not really what I want to do because I'm not an administrative side guy. But at the school that I was at, Brentsville, when I first got there, they were just coming out of having many years in a row of being really bad. Like just really bad. Like they went 3 years in a row without winning a game within like the last 10, 15 years. Like
I remember us talking about that. Yeah.
it was really bad at Brentsville. And when I got there, my first year, we went 6-6 and made the first round of the playoffs and lost. Right. But that was huge compared to what we had before, and then we built that program. And then the head coach leaves and another guy comes in and, things get shifted around. New players come in, new coaches come in, like all kinds of different stuff happens. And with the last coach that we had, Coach White, we go 3 years in a row. First year, we break the win record at the school. We won 12, 14 games, something. We only lost one game. Then we lost in the playoffs. Next year, we did the same thing, right? We won an extra game on top of it, right? Last year, we thought we had a shot at a state title in a year where we thought we were going to have a down year because we had a lot of guys graduate the year before that were contributors. And, we have had 3 years in a row with high success, getting all the way to the state semifinal game. And this year, after we graduated 20 seniors, it's going to be a completely new team. It'll be a new quarterback, whoever that's going to end up being, because there was some questions about who it was going to end up being. We had our best player recently just transfer out of the program, so he's gone. And so it's like, what do you got left? You got what we had on our JV team last year, pretty much, and a few guys that were juniors or sophomores on varsity last year. And so the expectation was like, I think I talked to you, partway through February. I was like, dude, I'm not sure our head coach is going to stay, right? Because he had offers to go to bigger schools and go to better programs, to be honest. And he decided to stay, and it surprised everybody. And so I was like, well, if he leaves, do I stay? and for a new head coach, if he leaves, do I go for the head coaching job, even though I don't really want to be the head coach? It's like, would I do that? because since he's going to be a legend now because he had 3 years in a row of record-breaking years that Brentsville never had before, and that would be hard to follow. So I don't think I would want to do that. And there's talk now, we've had a couple other coaches leave. There's talk now that he might not stay next year. And some other of the coaches on staff were like, Coach, I met with a couple of them, they said we would stay on staff if you came over to be the head coach. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to be a head coach. That's a tough decision. And there's some other factors that go into it. Like I swear the county's trying to kill our school. They don't want to pay for a piddly little 3A school while everybody else is a 6A school. So and the building's like 90 years old. It's not a great situation, but
now, like one other thing before we go, like
yeah.
obviously you used to podcast,
Yes,
quite heavily and do other things like, your little mini clinics and stories, and then your beard oil videos, which I will never forget. As long as you and you ever keep those big days down, I will never forget the beard. Like, oh god, and what
which
happened?
I don't do the beard stuff like the TikToks and all that kind of stuff anymore, but I still use beard oil. Like I still do all that stuff. Like I had a nice beard a couple months ago, and then we started going to the pool and that in it. I was like, I gotta cut it all off.
I just remember when we were talking, because you did a couple of them, and like really took off, had like several thousand views, like
yeah.
compared to anything else you've done at that point. And then obviously the podcast, and that took various forms, and me, you, Steve, Mike, and oh god, who am I forgetting? I feel bad.
So it was, a couple of us. We had Matt. Matt was on there.
Yeah,
He
Matt,
he didn't podcast himself, but he joined us a lot.
Matt,
Um,
me,
and then
you, and
my
oh,
then we had James,
yes, thank you.
who was James is my co-host on
And
the armchair.
I just saw James a couple months ago too.
Yeah.
I was like, I can picture his face. I'm just like, oh god. So obviously you did that. Like, obviously you hit a burnout point.
Hmm.
I mess around with every year, because I mass record like an idiot and then edit them, and then they just sit out there, and I try not to do it. Like I said, this is the first time I've recorded anything for a podcast or for the channel April, so 3 or 4 months.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, there's other things I do, the global, and there's other things I put up, but um, I'm trying to avoid that aspect. So, but like, I mean, what caused a you to get burned out, and B, is there anything that you would want to go back and do? Not necessarily maybe football, but is there anything that you've had an idea, or you're like, hey, because like I said, I'm playing around with a couple ideas on where to go forward. I keep messing with Cody Gardner about getting me some cover two and barbecue videos. Um, that is the whole text string. It is great. But that's a digression. So,
Yeah.
but for you, is there anything like why, and then kind of any ideas or anything you want to do?
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, I used to host and co-host a podcast called the Armchair Coaching Podcast, and um, that's how, like, actually, like, I think I had been messaging you before. Like, we knew each other on social media before I even did that, so I can't say I met you through that. But
But we
we
have to know each
definitely,
other that through
yeah,
that.
we definitely got to know each other better through the podcast. So like me starting the podcast was something that happened right when COVID hit because I got bored.
Yeah.
There was nothing to do, and all I wanted to do was talk football, right? And I got bored, so we started the podcast. I think you were on like the very first episode. I think we talked about Clemson or something.
Yeah.
It was one of those like
Yeah.
profile. Like that was what we first did with that podcast. Like we just talked about college football, um, which was great, and then it eventually morphed into um me doing interviews with other coaches, and I tried to get interviews with a vast number of coaches on there, like different strategies, different schemes, all different kinds of stuff, different levels. Tried to get college coaches on there as much as possible, because that's what like gets the views, right? Is if they see he's a college coach, oh boy, I'm going to listen to that
Sure.
episode.
We can go with that theory. Sure. If
And
that's the theory we'll go with.
it's kind of like going to Glacier clinics, right? That everybody goes to the guy who's at Rutgers or Penn State, but doesn't go to the guy who's teaching you how to win at high school or whatever. And so at first it was really fun, and I really enjoyed doing it, and I really enjoyed like meeting new people, getting to know new people, and the networking aspect was fantastic. And then James jumped in, we became co-hosts, and he helped out. He did all the editing, all like the adding the music and all of that kind of stuff. He handled that, and it was great. He handled like the graphics for the logo and everything. But it eventually got to the point where I'm the kind of person who I kind of have like an obsessive personality. Like I'll obsess over something for a while and just dive in, right? And I got obsessed with trying to increase the views or trying to increase the number of downloads. I'd get obsessed with trying to find like the best person to interview and reaching out to them. And I also like trying to make sure that I dropped a new episode at least once a week. And, James wanted to do it where we were going like 2 or 3 episodes a week. And we were getting into a lot of things, like trying to do videos, like clinics and all this other kind of stuff. But the one thing I will say is we weren't making any money doing any of this, like nothing. And I was putting hours and hours and hours of effort into this. And eventually it got to the point where I would tell my wife, hey, got another podcast thing going on tonight. And I didn't want to come down here and do it. And it's nothing against the people that were on the podcast. Like I still had great people coming on and good topics. And it's just like I fell out of love with it. And I was also going through a couple mental health things, nothing super serious. But it just became a chore. And they got to the point where I was like, I just can't do it anymore. And so I told that James, I'm like, look, I'm going to have to suspend this indefinitely. I just can't do it, the way we've been doing it. And it's been over 2 years and I haven't recorded an episode since. And to be honest, I haven't even looked at like, oh God, what was the app that we would, it was like podcast. It's called Podcasters now, but it was something else.
Well, it was Anchor, and then it became
Anchor.
Yep, and then Spotify bought it,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like I upload stuff on there, but I rarely look at it. Like I've stopped. I haven't cared in years, like numbers and all that. Like it's cool to see, like when you pull up YouTube analytics and all that jazz, but like at this point, like it is what it is. Like you're not. I mean, it's not where you make money, and I've never tried to make money. I mean, it's nice to get a little extra here and there to help pay for some things or cover some costs or whatever, but it's not. You want to make money? It's in football. It's books,
Yeah.
and paid speaking tours. The paid speaking tours are usually for those people who are retired or out of teaching or out of whatever. Like the real money is in books and manuals. That's where the money is. It's not in clinics. It's not in this or that. It is in books. I learned that quite a time ago. And I'm not smart enough to write anything.
It's like, I've wondered, especially now that I have more time, like, and that's another part of it was when I started doing head coaching of the JV and my time was being put like I just didn't have the mental time. Like, I needed a break, and just talking more football and having that schedule and not having the time for my family was taking a toll. And um I've just, I've thought about going back and trying it again, but I'm like, is it worth it? Like why? The only aspect I would ever do it for would be networking, and that's the only reason I would do it. I don't feel like I really offer something on the football market that other people haven't already done better than I could ever do it. Like, I could sit here and talk X's and O's, but how many videos are on YouTube already talking about every play in the world? Why would I put my effort into it? Right? Like,
I'll say the YouTube coaching market is getting smaller. People are getting out left and right now. People are getting
it's
out.
because it's all been done. Like,
That or burnout. I think a lot
yeah,
of it is truly
burnout.
like I've seen a couple coaches get out of coaching and the YouTube stuff, and it's been all burnout. Like
It's like, there's certain guys out there who thrive in that kind of thing. Like, look at like Kenny Simpson. He's thriving.
he's
Like, and
turned
he's
into
still coaching.
he's turned his into a full business though. That's the difference. Like he and I know Kenny, and I'm not gonna say I'm best friends with Kenny, but we have a good relationship, good enough relationship. And Kenny has turned his into a business. He has a fireworks business. He mass produces books, clinics. Like he is the modern day Coach's Choice Championship Productions is what Kenny is. So he's turned his into his business. I don't count him as a YouTube person anymore. He runs a business. And he took the Rick Stewart model and perfected it, quote unquote. Kenny's actually going to do his. I mean, but I think it's already been announced, and I could really get two craps less if it hasn't. Like, he one of his install clinics he's doing at our school in the spring. Like he'll come to Zanesville. So, and I think a lot of the reason that happened is, I mean, the location's prime. Like we're right off I-70 between Columbus and Pittsburgh, like dead in the middle. So that helps. But two, I mean, relationships matter,
Yep.
and so I'm putting my word and my name on this, that this will work smoothly. You'll have this facility, blah blah. It's good. But like, if you look at some of these other people, they're just getting out, and it's burnout, it's age, it doesn't really pay anything. I think that people discovered.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why I've looked at other non-football oriented things. Like, 'cause I don't care. Like football, I'm not here to try to make money, but I could easily do something like monthly or bi-weekly podcast on economics or something else in sports. So I don't know. Like, so that's where if I could cook better, I'd do it on food. Like
Yeah.
I just need to do like food critic reviews or something.
Yeah.
That would.
I
But yeah.
the one you asked me, one of the questions was did I have any ideas for something that I would go back and do? I have actually thought about, like, maybe doing a YouTube video or two of going over how I practice plan. I
Yeah.
think one of my strengths as a coach is my organization and my practice planning and having everything set up in a specific way. And one of the ways that I did that was I got really good at using Google Docs. And I figured out how to make practice schedules using Google Docs. And then I also use that to make um, I would make my call sheets out of it. I would make my, scripts for practice out of it. Um, I would do everything using Google Docs. And like, I thought about doing that, doing a tutorial of like how to make a practice plan using the table and the Google Docs. And because, you know, I could sit here and talk about it, but most people don't know what all these things are. Like, I can sit here, oh, but do this function, do that function, and they're probably going to fall asleep. But if I did like a YouTube video on it, like a real quick thing, and um, I could actually show them exactly what to click on, how I set it up. And I actually did it where I made like 2 or 3 templates,
Yeah.
like one for like an offensive day, one for a defensive day, and they had some different things, but most of it was the same. And I would just go in and like on Google Docs, you take the one, you make a copy of it so that you keep the original template and not change it, make a copy for that day, and then just edit it from there. And I could have, like, once I had that done, it would take me, depending, because the way I practice scheduled, I tried to keep the days of the week the same. Like if it's a Wednesday, we do this, right? As much as possible. Which again, our JV schedule last year was so screwed up. we had 2 Monday night games, 2 Tuesday night games, a Thursday, and then like 3 Wednesday night games. So none of the weeks were the same. So I tried it as much as I could, and I could do like a practice plan in like 15 minutes. And that made my life so much easier, because the first struggling, like trying to write everything down every single day, and once I got the down, it was super simple. So I've thought about doing that, but then again, I get into like, but why? Am I going to make any money out of it? Is it really going to help anybody? You know,
Help, I think yes. If you want the money, put it on
probably
Coach.
not.
Well, you can put it on Coachtube.
Mm.
That's
I've thought about that. Like, I think Kenny does some things sometimes where he's like, "Oh, I've got my practice schedule here. I'm going to put it on my website for like $5. Here it is." And it's like, "Oh, I could do something like that, but nobody's going to pay for that." Because like nobody knows who I am. So
here's the thing. That's if you just put it on Coachtube, you'll get your money. Somebody will pay for, especially if you put it at a reasonable price. People will pay for it. Trust me, it happens. I see. I have scrolled through the never regions of Coachtube enough, looking for stuff.
yeah,
Does not matter who you are. Does not matter how many state titles you won. If you have a preview and it looks like quality, people will pay for it. I'm just telling you now. I
yeah.
know it for a fact. I
I've 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 thought about that for football stuff, but I've also thought about that for, I don't know if you're familiar with Teachers Pay Teachers.
Yep.
I thought about doing that too, because I'm pretty good at making up worksheets and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
it's
if I were you, I would like. I think you need to bring back the beard oil videos. I think that's you talk about wanting to make money. I think that's a route if you continue to pursue that.
I think I did kind of enjoy doing those, but I think it ends up being the similar conversation of what we said before. It's like, what can I offer
But,
that other people haven't already done?
it's
And
that those you just gotta understand those kind of fields. The people that watch those, the two type of people that watch that kind of stuff. One is the people looking for beard oil.
yeah,
Okay, which you can give a different perspective on it. Two is people who just randomly like watching people put beard oil on.
yeah.
I'm joking, but I'm not.
I
Uh,
thought about you know what Twitch is?
oh yeah, I love Twitch. I have people I
I
like Twitch. Oh, if I had the financial hookup, like to where I could stream effectively and I had the
yeah.
money to pay for it, I probably would for my
That's
NCAA
because
stuff.
I've thought about, like, what if I started streaming me playing my Dynasty mode or something like that?
You
Like,
could, and then you could save that video and upload it to your YouTube and just like
yeah,
like
because people will watch that stuff.
yeah.
So
Well, and
they,
make
they
any
might
money on.
get tired of me running rocket toss 10 times a game though.
Oh yeah, but that's things. People will spam it, watch it, the mess,
Yeah,
the comment, and do all that.
yeah.
That's the thing. People like. I mean, you got to deal with the negativity of online, obviously. Um, but
Well, I don't have, like, I know they have a whole setup where they have like cameras and
yeah,
like the headset. Like, this is the best headset I got. So like, unless I did computer games on here, I don't think I could be able to do it. Plus my PS5, which I bought a PS5 just to play this game.
same here.
Um, I, my PS5 is in the bedroom that my son and I sleep in. and my son would be right next to me, asleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, how would I do that? Like, because you have to interact. You can't just sit there being quiet and play, right? It's like you got to interact. Like, unless I had a setup downstairs, which that's a whole nother issue because he's a light sleeper and he'd come down. But I mean, I would think about it if I had the time. Like, I almost joined. Nate Allball asked me if I would join his online dynasty. I almost joined it, except for the $25,
Well,
pay that I had to
he's
do.
trying to put together a pot, and I mean,
Yeah, I was
I
like,
get what he's doing, but it's just,
if it was free, I would have done it like immediately.
or even like $10. 25 is, as a poor teacher, is not.
I've never been a competitive gamer. Like I've never been on, like, I don't play against other people. I would play against the computers. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're not a real gamer, but I do play. I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd,
Yeah.
and there's a mobile game called Lord of the Rings Rise to War, and I've played that probably for 3 years now when it first came out. And I'm pretty competitive. Um, and I've unfortunately started paying money to try and stay competitive. I know it's dumb. I shouldn't be doing it, but I enjoy it. And
Well, that's the thing. You're paying for your vice. That's your vice. Like,
yeah,
it's better than have a golf hobby, because that's really expensive.
ugh,
Way
or a
expensive. So it's
bourbon
like,
addiction.
yeah, it's are you gonna pay, if you're gonna pay for your vice? That's a cheap vice compared to golfing or
Yeah.
poker or.
Tell that to my wife, who every time I pay something, she sees it on the credit card statement. And she's like, "You're buying more?" I'm like, oh.
Well, you just reply with like, "Oh, at least I don't like expensive bourbon." Like,
Oh no, that's the problem because I do.
no, but I'm talking about, there's some people that like collect bourbon.
Oh, I know. I have
There's
done that before.
there's
Um,
people that do that and make YouTube videos out of that, and I'm just like,
oh yeah, I know.
well, that's a smart way of
Um,
doing it, at least.
and like today, Virginia, that we have an ABC system, so it's not like individual private liquor stores,
Yeah.
and they have allocated, like, if people aren't familiar with this, I don't know who's going to be, if you're keeping this or not. They have allocation systems for like the hard to find bourbons and other things. Um, and they haven't done a allocated drop in like 2 months. And they just dropped statewide. They just had a statewide drop today. And I got the email at like 2 o'clock, and I was at the pool. I was like, all right, Heather, let's go. I want to see if they had anything we hadn't had before. And by the time I got there around 2:30. The line was around the entire store and out the door. And there's only like 20 bottles of stuff left. And I was like, there's no way I would end up getting it. And it's crazy. Like we call them taters, people who sit there, they go early to try and find stores that are selling stuff like that. It's ridiculous. And so there's a lot of stuff that we don't get. If anybody's familiar with bourbon, I think one of them that most people would be familiar with is a company called Buffalo Trace. It's decent. It's hard to find. Um, that stuff. That's another rabbit hole that I went down a couple years ago. Was the whiskey rabbit hole. Um, like I said earlier, I think I'm a little bit on the tism spectrum. Uh, and so I will find an obsession that I lock onto for a while and go down rabbit holes. And that's a whole nother, like, I could talk and teach people about whiskey,
There you go.
and
There's your podcast right there.
there's people on YouTube that do it way better than I do. But I did start a second podcast. I don't know if you remember that or not. I think you helped me pick out like the name.
Yeah.
It was like Beards, Bourbon, and BS or something like that, and I did like one episode.
Well, that's
Uh,
I think you trying to prevent yourself from being burnt out.
that was when I was starting to get burned out with the football, and I was trying to find something else, and then like that didn't work out, and yeah, it was different. Oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know if you see that this is a deck of cards from Maker's Mark.
Okay.
I became a ambassador for Maker's Mark. And so technically I have a barrel that has my name on it in one of their um barrel houses. And when they start to bottle it, they send out an email saying, "Oh, why don't you come down and be one of the first ones to taste the bottle?" And I get some like, other stuff, but I haven't been down that road. I haven't bought a bottle of anything in a couple months. Um, I actually started to drink a lot less. I used to do a couple drinks a week, and now it's like maybe one, two a week. So still
Well,
enjoy it though.
that's not necessarily a bad thing, though.
Yeah, you're true. I've had a lot of other stuff. I started reading again, especially over the off season. I don't know, like what are you into any books? Like any kind
Um,
of
I have read, I mean, more books in the past 2 years than I have probably in my entire life times like 20.
So
Um,
if it doesn't have something to do with football,
if
I
it's not,
usually
if it's not football, it is usually an autobiography or culture book,
okay.
and you'll occasionally get like a history book because history is kind of my other
I,
vice
every
jam.
now and then, yeah, I'll do history if I find a good one. But my big thing is fantasy novels.
Okay,
Um and so a an author that's really popular right now in the fantasy circle is somebody called Brandon Sanderson.
okay,
Um and any anybody, if I don't know if this is going to make it to the podcast or not,
this part will.
anybody anybody who reads fantasy and is interested in that kind of thing, or they might be interested in trying to get into fantasy, um I would highly recommend reading Brandon Sanderson. Here's the thing, he has written probably like 50 books. And so in Brandon Sanderson, he has this universe in his book series called the Cosmere. And all the books in the Cosmere are part of that universe, but like each series is separate from the other. So there are connections and like Easter eggs for the series back and forth. And some of the characters travel between the different series, but for the most part, they're separate from each other. Um, and it's really freaking good. But like if you're just starting out and you want to get into reading Brandon Sanderson novels, um the first series that I would recommend is something called the Mistborn series. Some people may have heard of that or not. Really good. It's kind of like your base fantasy. If you're into fantasy already, it'll be easy to get into it. And the reason I say that is because like the mainline series from that whole thing is called the Stormlight Archives, which I've been reading. And give me 1 second.
You're good.
All right. So I just finished book 3 of the Stormlight Archives. This is book 3.
Yes.
All right. Every Stormlight Archive book is well over 1,000 pages apiece. All right. So it's like reading Lord of the Rings all over again. And
Yeah.
he's got 4 of them that have already been published, and the 5th one's going to be published later in December. And he's planning on writing 10 in that series.
Oh my
And
Jesus.
that's not counting all the other trilogies and stuff that are in that same universe. But those are a lot shorter. Like I took a break This is book 3. I took a break between book 4, and I just read a sequel to the Mistborn series that was like 300 pages, and I was like, I got through that in like a week or less. So when you start reading big books like this, these tomes, little, like, 300-page books that most people are like, oh, that's a long book. That's nothing.
No, well, but we read 8th grade, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, then the first 2 Lord of the Rings books, and we didn't read.
Yeah.
We just ran out of time, so that was um, my middle school. So
Yeah, The Hobbit was my intro. Well, I don't know if we do we count Harry Potter as fantasy? I don't know what
yeah, I mean,
if that counts as fantasy. That was probably my intro to fantasy. Because then I didn't get into The Hobbit until after I started reading Harry Potter. My grandfather got me into The Hobbit. He saw me reading Harry Potter, and he handed me his copy of The Hobbit. And then I watched the Lord of the Rings movies. I watched the movies, the Peter Jackson films, before I actually read any of the books.
they're not terrible adaptations. Like, obviously, they're not 100% on, obviously, but for the
Yeah,
and what you're trying to do, they're fine.
for for a book adaptation, that would probably be my top choice.
Yeah,
Would be the Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings.
obviously he changes some stuff and makes whatever, but like for the most part, they're fine. Like I said, I'm not going
Yeah,
to get into that. That's it. There's too many people out complaining about it, and I don't
I
have to.
watch them at least twice a year.
And I mean, standalone, they're good movies. They are.
Yes.
Um,
And then so last year, my wife bought me like the complete set of like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. It's like the big complete set that has like the 4K edition of the movie, like the newest, because they every so often they update like the graphics and everything.
yeah.
Um, and we didn't have a 4K TV, but now with the PS5, I can play the 4K edition because I have a 4K TV now with the PS5. I can play those. Um, And also, I was surprised with the PS5 because people kept telling me that they didn't have backwards compatibility,
Does
but they do. I can play my PS4 games on there. So there's a Lord of the Rings game like the Shadow of Mordor and the Shadow of War. I don't know if anybody's familiar with those. It's like the Arkham Knight games, the Batman games, but for Lord of the Rings. It's very similar concept and great freaking games. Um, yeah, I've been doing a lot of reading. Um, are you familiar with the Aragon series, the Paolini, the Dragon Rider series?
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it though.
Okay. So, Christopher Paolini, he wrote Aragon, and his whole series with that is called The Inheritance Cycle. They made a movie out of it, but we usually don't talk about it because it's freaking terrible. It's kind of like the Avatar movie or the Last Airbender movie.
Well, that's absolutely atrocious.
That
But
it's a similar thing.
I
They're
remember the
absolutely
Aragon thing.
atrocious.
I remember when the movie came out. Now I remember when the
Yeah.
movie came out. So
Mhm.
that don't exist.
Like the books are good. Like when I was younger, I was like, oh man, these are so great. Like now it's like now that I'm reading, like Brandon Sanderson is really good with character and world building. Like this is vastly better than the original Aragon book was. But Paolini just released a sequel. He said he's going to keep writing in that series, and I read that in like 3 days when it first came out, and it was a lot better than the originals were. But those were books that I got into. I still have my original copy of Lord of the Rings over there. It's barely holding on to its binding. Um, most of my section of books, if it's not a fantasy book, it's a football book though. So, another one that I really got into If other than, I've read all the Game of Thrones books, and I'm big into Game of Thrones and watching the House of the Dragon series, which is fantastic, by the way.
I just,
Um,
I don't know. I don't know. I tried, couldn't get into it.
um, that's another idea for a podcast. We could sit there and talk trash about TV shows.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about getting
It's
fired on that one at all. Like they
yeah.
don't.
So I read Game of Thrones. If you're interested in Game of Thrones and you kind of like the grimdark fantasy, you would probably like an author. Um, his name is Joe Abercrombie, and he has a series called the First Law series. Fantastic. It's very There's a lot of sex and violence in there, so it's right up the alley of George R.R. Martin. Um, you know, Speaking of like TV shows, I've been keeping up with House of the Dragon. I just finished watching The Boys season 4 the other day. I don't know if have you seen that?
No, I've seen clips of it, but like for me, like to be honest, like bluntly, like my wife watches like Stars, Max,
Yeah,
and whatever else. I pretty much just watch YouTube stuff or Twitch.
yeah.
That
Um,
that's literally because between the podcasting and coaching and teaching, I just don't have that. And when I get in a TV series, I want like, and then it just abruptly ends because it gets canceled, or I just get so dang disappointed that it just,
mhm.
or when the series is on too long, it diverts so far off the original that it just like irritates the crap out of me.
Yeah, that's
I mean, that's pretty much what happened to Walking Dead. Like,
yeah. I never got into Walking Dead, so I never had to deal with that. But I think a similar situation with another TV series that was really popular back in the day was Supernatural.
yep, that
I watched that, and dude, it went like what, 15 seasons.
I don't know, but yeah,
Um
I've seen them out.
and the like the first 5 seasons were fantastic, great TV. And then after that, like, I kept watching it because it wasn't bad, and I got into the characters, but some of it got repetitive, but then a lot of it, like you said, it goes on too long, and it just veers away from what it should have been. Um, and there's a lot of that. That's a good idea. We could totally do a TV podcast. You know what I really got into, and I never thought I would, was Great British Baking Show.
Oh, I love the celebrity one.
Uh-huh.
All about like when they bring on like random British celebrities and comedians and those like the regular's fine, but
Yeah.
the celebrity one is my jam.
It
And
it
it's
got to
not
the
nearly
point
as good as it should be.
my wife and I were like trying to find a TV show, and somebody had recommended it, and I was like, why don't we try it? We weren't having high hopes for it, but
Honestly,
I tell you what, like, we got into it. It was a nightly ritual, and we would talk about it.
yeah, no, it's great.
we and It was like, good lord, I had no idea I was going to get into this kind of thing. So I try not to do too much reality TV.
Well, reality TV is not actually reality TV 90%.
Yeah, it's just
It's all badly scripted.
those competition shows are nice though. But yeah. So I don't know if I have much else to talk about. We should definitely keep in touch about starting up a new, well, I don't know if you actually want to start more podcasts or not with all
Oh,
the
I
stuff
know.
going on with
Again,
you.
I don't know what I need to figure out what I'm doing after the football season. That's because here's the
Yeah.
problem. Like, and I say like it's July. Like, oh, you got plenty of time. A, no, I don't. And B, you need to set that stuff up now. Like that's just
Hmm.
the world that we unfortunately live in. Like you can't prep stuff last second. Um, I mean, my
Yep.
hope is we're still playing into late November is the goal, but you knows what I do and how that can change. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I mean, we can keep talking here in a second. Let me just end this. That's follow Coach on Twitter. If you want to see old videos and a variety of other things, check out his YouTube. It's still up. There's like, share, subscribe on mine and his. That's how stuff is found, grown, all that jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, as in our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.